Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders have teamed up to basically give you Bernie Sanders wearing a Joe Biden mask. Yes, that's right. While Joe Biden is the face of who is running, the policy is being set by Bernie Sanders. You know what that means? Yeah, it means halt on deportations, $15 minimum wage, reparations, and of course, health care for non-citizens. You've heard it. This is a very, very radical policy agenda. So you basically have Trump, who's running as a moderate Republican, which means liberals, you can vote for the guy. I know his character and his demeanor, or you can just jump off the far left cliff. Yeah, I think we've been placed in a very difficult position this year. You know, Republicans probably have, for the most part, little problem voting for Trump. There has been some disillusionment among some Trump supporters, but I think a lot of the media is hyping things. They're in a game of telephone, and they're blinded by the fact that, you know, they write these negative stories about Trump saying he's going to lose, and they all keep reading it and reinforcing it. And that may be why he won in the first place, and they couldn't see it coming. But this, you mean to tell me this is going to win? Are you nuts? If this wins, I tell you what, man, then I will accept being wrong. And I will mock myself for this demeanor. But I tell you right now, I really see this platform from Biden, and I'm like, dude, I don't think Americans want like this level of crazy. Let's read the story. Fox News says, a task force set up by Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders this week released a broad array of policy recommendations for the party's convention platform, part of an effort to find common ground between the party center and its left flank. The initiative represents an effort to bring together the more radical elements of the party, those who had supported Sanders, a self-described democratic socialist, along with Biden's more centrist candidacy. The task force mission, according to a statement, is to address 6 key areas: climate change, criminal justice reform, the economy, education, healthcare, and immigration. Notably, a number of hot-button issues for the left, including Medicare for all, defunding the police, the Green New Deal, and abolishing immigration and abolishing ICE, are not explicitly mentioned in the recommendations, but the document does move in the direction of those outcomes. Though the end result is not what I or my supporters would have written alone, the task forces have created a good policy blueprint that will move this country in a much-needed progressive direction, Sanders said. Biden, meanwhile, said it was a bold, transformative plan for our party and for our country. And I am deeply grateful to Senator Sanders for working together to unite our party and deliver real lasting change for generations to come, he said. You are not uniting the party, and I am deeply offended. You have gone off the rails. Bernie Sanders used to make sense. He did. He had some progressive positions, some far left positions, but for the most part, he said, hey, open borders, it's a bad idea, right? Because we want to help American workers. He said that letting in too many low-skilled workers would be bad for wages. He said that this year, I believe it was this year in the New York Times. But now Bernie Sanders has just said, I don't care. Whatever the kids say, just write it down and put my name on it. And Joe Biden said, oh, what? You know, the thing. And so now what do we get? 2 old people who don't care, who are out of touch and putting forward proposals that seem nonsensical. But hey, if you're interested in catering to the Twitterati, by all means, go ahead and do so. Regular Americans will be somewhere else. The economy. On the economic front, the document calls for 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave, as well as a $15 minimum wage, something that the party's left has been calling for years. It also includes support for a House bill that would study the issue of reparations to Black Americans for their years of slavery. They do this every 4 years. You know this, right? They're like, maybe now's the time for reparations. It's like, okay, they're not even talking about reparations. They're talking about an exploratory committee, which you know will come back with nothing. Democrats commit to the, and I'll tell you this, man, I think it was Tulsi Gabbard was in favor of this, and many of her own supporters were posting online saying this is not the right move. Most Americans do not support this. It makes no sense to make most of the Americans, many of whom are immigrants, pay taxes for something they weren't here for. I mean, I get it, but I don't know how you solve that problem. Let's go to policing and criminal justice. Radical reforms to policing have seen broad support within the Democratic Party in the wake of the police-involved death of George Floyd. Calls to abolish or defund the police are absent in the policy document, but it does include a number of reforms, including the banning of chokeholds, investments in community policing, and investigating patterns of police misconduct. The problem isn't chokeholds. The problem is the application of chokeholds where they're not needed. In the instance of, I believe it was Eric Garner, they put this guy in a chokehold and claimed they didn't. And the guy was selling Lucy's cigarettes. It didn't need to happen. Now, what happens if you have someone waving a weapon around and you get to subdue them? Well, a chokehold makes sense in that regard. You know why? If someone's got a dangerous weapon, you want as many options as possible for de-escalation, and that may mean a chokehold. What's the alternative? Well, as many cops have said, their gun. That's what the Democrats seem to want. They said it would provide federal funding to create a civilian corps of unarmed first responders, including social workers, EMTs, and trained mental health professionals to handle nonviolent emergencies, particularly mental health emergencies and low-level conflicts. It claims this would allow police officers to focus more on serious crimes. 100% support. I don't think you need to call it a civilian corps, though. I think police are civilians. They live in the neighborhood, right? They're not like military or anything. But I do like the idea of what's been referred to in many countries as the civil guard. So yes, it would actually be, in my opinion, awesome. I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. Healthcare. While there is no Medicare for all, which is one of Sanders' signature proposals, it does call for the establishment of a higher quality public option plan without deductibles, administered by the government, not private companies with no copays, allowing people to enroll in Medicare at 60 instead of 65. Democrats will also make available on the marketplace a platinum level federally administered health insurance option with low fees and no deductibles so that everyone will have access to this high quality, low cost plan. Low income Americans will be automatically enrolled in this federally administered option at zero cost to them. The document reads. How is that not Medicare for all? I'm sorry, you're saying low income people will just get it? That sounds like Medicare for all. Listen, on the surface, a high quality public option without deductibles, I support. I like the idea. Now, you're going to have to give me the financials before I throw my weight behind it, but I am in favor of a public option. I believe that is good competition. If you have overregulation in certain areas, that's a problem as well. So I really do think we need regulation reform 100%. Many people have complained that the regulations of the market has created a lot of these problems, and perhaps that was the goal, because then you offer up the government as the only solution, and maybe a public option contributes to that. I think it's fair to say, and my position is, while I definitely lean in favor of regulations and social programs, we need to make sure that we do a review of all of these programs on a regular basis to make sure they haven't become a problem. And if, in fact, the private market would be better, then maybe the answer is deregulating. I don't know for sure, though. For now, on the surface, I think it sounds like it makes a lot of sense that we have a public option and private options because they compete. It's a good thing. I'm not sure we actually have that right now. Let's go down to illegal immigration. They say this. It calls for the end to the migrant protection protocols, known as the Remain in Mexico policy. I actually disagree with that, whereby migrants are kept south of the border while their hearings went ahead. I think the migrant protection protocols makes a lot of sense. Sorry, it does. It would end the asylum cooperation agreement with Northern Triangle countries that had allowed migrants to be either stopped there or returned to those countries. No, I'm sorry. Trump is right on this front. If someone enters Mexico and Mexico offers them asylum, they should take it. There's no reason for them to bypass Mexico and try and come to the United States. If they're from Mexico and they try and come here, that's different. You know, if they get approved, they get approved. If they come through Mexico and they want to get asylum here in the United States, in the U.S., then they can remain where they are. I don't see why that I don't see why that's bad. They go on education, but I want to make sure I hit on this point from Breitbart. The Unity platform with Bernie will give free healthcare to DACA illegal immigrants. They say in Joe Biden's Unity platform, Democrats are vowing to provide free American taxpayer-funded healthcare to illegal aliens who are able to enroll in the DACA program. So first of all, they would restart DACA, admitting way more recipients for this program. They would then grant them access to the marketplace. Now, that alone, I don't see it being that big of a deal. If people are paying for healthcare, then so what? If they're buying a service, that's fine, right? The issue is they go beyond this. First of all, I do not believe DACA should be restarted. I do believe DACA as it stands today should remain. And for Dreamers, I believe we need a path to citizenship. That's because we are compromising. We are saying, look, we got a ton of people here brought here as kids. We have an agreement. Both sides don't agree, but we'll agree to say this one time if we then put an end to it. They want to reopen it. That's going to create an endless wave of problems for this country. You cannot exist as a country If you keep letting in more and more new people with no ties to the community, it's why we have bail in the first place for crimes. If someone is considered to have no ties to the community, they don't get bailed out because they'll flee. If you live in your area and they say this person's never going to leave, this is their home, then they bail you out because they know you'll come back. This works in the same way as it would for anything. If we open up the doors and say everyone can come in, they'll start voting for things because they're trying to grant voting rights under the Breathe Act. They'll start voting for things in their interest, not in the interest of a community for which they have no ties. It needs to be considered that this will happen, and it'll be a net negative. So we need to make sure that we don't allow forces to come in and be a burden. We need to make sure that when immigrants come in, we properly allocate for how to provide for them to keep them safe and allow them to flourish. But I'll keep this one short and I'll wrap it up there. There are some things I think are fine to agree with in this unity platform. The sad reality, however, is Joe Biden is not a moderate. And with this platform, they have unified to the best of their ability. But what this really means is that Joe Biden, who was already more left than moderate, has now compromised with the far left, creating a slightly far left platform, to which I mostly don't agree. We'll see if this is enough for the Democrats, but I got to say, I kind of doubt it. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.